Hi, I'm John McElroy. I love talking about things automotive. Today, we're going to talk about something really interesting, a new type of radar, a software-defined radar. We're going to get into the details of that in a minute. This has been developed by a company called Neural Propulsion Systems, or better known as NPS. And we've got a whale of a good panel here to talk about this today, including Rick Wagner, the former chairman and CEO of General Motors, John Casesa, very famous Wall Street analyst, also did some duty at Ford as part of their strategy planning, now at Guggenheim Investors. And we've got Behrooz Rezvani, the CEO of NPS. And Behrooz, let me just start with you. What is this software-defined radar? I mean, I've never heard of such a thing before.
Well, thanks for getting me started on this topic. Uh, Software-defined radar, or essentially software for radar, is hardware independent, hardware agnostic. So you can put that software behind any hardware, and then it'll figure out what it needs to do, and it comes up with an answer. Now, the software quality and the algorithm quality determines how good that performance of the radar is going to be. But all the modern radars, they have basic hardware, and then the software is the one that makes it really valuable for a given radar size, essentially.
So, if I'm understanding this right, Behrooz, you can take almost any radar and add your system to it and really improve it.
That's correct. So we are hardware agnostic, meaning that we can take any hardware when the data is given to us in a raw format, and then we extract the maximum amount of information, what we call the optimal amount. So our software, which we call hyper definition radar operating systems, or heroes, is really optimal, meaning that you can't do better. And therefore, um, a lot of new information that's coming, and that's the subject of the conversation for today that we would like to share.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get into more details, but I'd like to go to Rick Wagner and say, Rick, what's your interest in this company, and what are some of the opportunities that you see for it?
Yeah, so my interest, John, over the last probably 8 or 10 years, I got into this startup world, and which I obviously didn't do a lot of in my GM days. I guess we started up OnStar, but that was a little different. But as I got into it, it was a period of such change in the auto industry, which you've covered, and all sorts of things, propulsions, autonomous, software defined. So there's tons of startups that are going into specific areas or macro areas, batteries, et cetera. And I just got fascinated in getting to know a number of these startups and their owners and their stories, and invested in a few. And at some point, my good friend, our good friend, Larry Burns, said, you should talk to this guy, Behrooz. Larry had been doing some work with Behrooz, I think, over a period of years. And occasionally on the golf course, Larry would give me an earful about what they were doing. And it's pretty sophisticated technologically, so a bit over my head, but I always count on Larry to give me some good advice. So he said, look, just get on the phone with Behrooz and chat with him. And Behrooz was so convincing that I decided to invest in the company, and I'm a board advisor. And as a result, just been fascinating to see what they could do with software in improving radar, which, as you know, is so important with the direction the industry is going. I mean, it's just a breakthrough. As we deliver the goods here for neural propulsion systems.
Yeah, yeah. John Casesa, same question. What got you interested in the company?
Well, look, I think that NPS is at the heart of, just a case study of the kind of technological revolution that's occurring in the auto industry. I mean, we're going from a mechanical, unconnected, essentially done device to a connected, electric, intelligent, software-driven device. And so the idea that the vehicle is smarter than you, that it can protect you, is something that people are beginning to expect. I mean, they're not going into showrooms asking about six-cylinder, eight-cylinder anymore. They see that screen with all that intelligence in there, which up until now has been infotainment, but have now gotten to understand the value of automated braking, traction control. So I think this is what Beirut is doing is an essential part of the pathway eventually to autonomous vehicles. So to me, that's a major change in the business model of the industry, and this company is at the center of it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the software-defined thing and that it's hardware agnostic. And Beirut, explain a little bit more about how that works.
Right. So typically a radar system consists of two pieces, a antenna and what we call RF chips that takes a signal from it, sends a ping and listens to what comes back. And then there is a signal processing part that takes the signal that came back to the radar, and that's the hardware, and then analyze the signals. And so when we got started on this project 7 years ago almost, with my co-founder, Professor Hasibi out of Caltech, we had this fundamental question that what's the limit, how good we can get? Because radars traditionally have not been very predictable, and that's why they haven't been used a lot until recently. So the big question is that how can you differentiate between two objects so you don't hit them, and then how can you make sure it's not false? And those are the two big challenges of radar, that why it hasn't taken over everything, but it's not is now going to, because um, the radar is the only technology that works on all weather conditions and also is reasonably priced. It's not as expensive or fragile of LiDAR. And like cameras, they're good, but cameras only work during the day. And so that's the problem. And so I think radar is at the heart of ADAS. And ADAS, as John was saying, it's going to go through, a big adoption rate. Uh, all the US automotive makers, they are on track to get automatic emergency braking and pedestrian automatic emergency braking standard in their offerings. That's something that also the consumers want. It's probably better to come from Rick or John on that department, but I think that is the draw by consumers.
And I'll
John,
get
can I
back to
hop in
that.
here for a second? Just
Yeah,
for a second, I
jump
wanted
in.
to comment. Beirut quickly hit it, but with the first couple times I listened to his pitch, what really struck me was the fact that this could be a very cost competitive solution, because and John Cassessa knows there's many great ideas in the auto industry that four-wheel steer on pickup trucks, stuff like that, which we bring out and then the customer won't buy them because they're so expensive. And what excited me when I first saw Beirut was the opportunity to really do this at a very reasonable cost compared to the traditional solutions. And I think the LiDAR cost is coming down. The cameras are obviously very competitive, but still, when you look at that mix of things, if you can get a super duper radar system, which NPS has, you can really fine tune the cost of this. And then, like so many technologies in the industry, we spread it from the top of the market down, but sometimes that's taken a long time because it takes a long time to get out costs. And what excited me was if we can do what we're on the road to doing, this whole issue of can you afford it? The answer becomes yes, much sooner for more classes of vehicles and more vehicle buyers.
And if I could add to that, I completely agree with what Rick is saying. And I think there's also going to be a competitive urgency about cost, and because the practical thing is that the Chinese are bringing down the cost of cars like solar panels, and even in automated vehicles. There was a story today from one of our friends, the venture community, about Baidu, which is now doing an all-in AV, autonomous vehicle, for $30,000. They're starting fares at 55 cents. And so we have a major technology change and an enormous global threat here. So one thing is consumer expectations, but those expectations will change as these vehicles start to make their way around the world. So, Rick, I see this as part of an imperative.
And Beirut, go back to explaining this. So you're taking radar signals, and you don't care what radar it is,
Right.
and then you're using your software. So this is artificial intelligence that you're using to clean up the signal in a way.
Yeah, we have the foundation of our technology was a mathematical framework out of Caltech and MIT called atomic norm. An atomic norm is really an elegant system of math and physics essentially behind understanding the scene. And one of the big challenges of radar has always been it's very hard to learn from radar signals because they're very inconsistent, and it doesn't lend itself too much to become an AI radar. So to get around that and to understand what is the fundamental way to approach radar signals is to go through following this mathematical breakthrough atomic norm that essentially treats every signal from a mathematical perspective and try to explain the scene based on the data that is looking. So it's not like traditional radar systems. Radar system tradition, they all have based on filters that you give it certain parameters and you expect to look at the data and say, okay, what does it look like? Atomic norm is a fundamentally different approach in the sense it says, let me look at the entire scene and let me see if I can best explain what the scene is going to look like based on what physics and math tell us. In other words, it has an understanding of math and physics behind it before it solves it. And that's why it's a major breakthrough and major improvement based, compared to anything else that's on the market. Um, we have been able to show that we can get to incredibly low resolution, such as the one out of LiDAR. So in fact, at CES, we're going to talk about 0.25 degrees angular resolution, which is the big thing. Everyone in automotive looks at LiDAR was all about angular resolution and accuracy, and nobody expected radars could hit those numbers. And we're going to show that at substantially lower prices.
Well, Rick, if this is so cost competitive, what kind of market opportunities do you see?
I think it'll be a combination. That'll be determined by a combination of factors. One is regulatory, and there are some regulations which were previously mentioned, which really are going to compel the automakers to move in this direction. And historically, when given clear regulations, the automakers have been pretty good at that. Then I think the second thing is we have to get the first company to adopt it. You know how that works. Sometimes just because others don't do it, who wants to stick their neck out? But as John just said, there's a competitive element of this too. So I do think a lot of the OEMs are more forward-leaning than back in my days, where hey, we better be looking at these new technologies. It's not just wait until they're proven, but let's get in the forefront. And Behrooz will probably talk about. We had some automakers very engaged with us at this point, to the extent he can't talk about that. But the other thing I think, besides the safety, cost, regulation, consumer convenience. You all have done this, but so I like to drive. I drive long distances from north to south in the summer, and fall is or winter and fall, as everybody in Michigan who's retired does. And you get used to Super Cruise, you're not going back. I mean, it just makes it so much easier. So give me the next layer. I tell you, when I first got the Super Cruise, I go, well, I'm testing it out. I'm not sure I need this. And now I'm saying, let's get to the next step. Let's make this easier and easier. And I think as consumers get used to that, it's going to be a requirement, particularly again, back to our point of if we can make it reasonably cost competitive. The other point, the side benefit of this, which is in a way almost the most important aspect of it, dramatically improve safety on the roads. We've had this not so great trend in fatalities and this rapid growth in actually pedestrian fatalities. And this sort of stuff gets right at that, and it'll perform dramatically better than humans will be able to, on just by scientific definition. And I think probably put us on a road, and that's going to be a long road because of the slow turnover of vehicles, but on a road to really significantly reducing highway fatalities and accidents, which, I mean, in the end, may be the sort of most important aspect of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because you're right. I mean, over the last decade, we've seen traffic fatalities in the United States only go up as we've added more and more safety equipment. So we got to make sure we're adding the right safety equipment too. But John Casaso, let me come back to you. I mean, Rick talked about automotive opportunities. Seems to me this radar has got applications beyond automotive.
I think that's right, and I say I don't have much expertise outside of automotive, and people even question how much I have in automotive. But the companies that I've been working with that have exposure, that have technology that's applicable to defense, this is an incredible time for them, and I think that seems aerospace and defense seems naturally interesting, and so I don't know, Beirut, even how you're thinking about that, but it feels like, from my experience, that the DoD has torn up the playbook and is fast tracking new technologies. I'm involved in a company doing 3D printing, is getting a lot of business in defense that was just came out of almost out of nowhere. So to me, John, that would be very, very interesting and adjacent.
Yeah. Behruz, what can you tell us about that beyond
Yeah,
automotive?
I mean, publicly we have informed, from press releases that we are working with GM on the radar side of things and with RTX again on radar solutions. Um, they have both companies offer a different approach to solve problems and understand the problems. One of the things that I would say we had to deal with, the the disruption of our offerings are fairly significant in the sense that people are skeptical, rightly so, that if these things are actually working the way we say it's working. And everyone wants to go through a very detailed processes of evaluating and confirming that'll work. In automotive, it's in some ways much easier because you know what the vehicles look like, what they want, and it's a very complex scene, but nonetheless, everyone has same set of problems to fix and work on. In defense is very different. There are so many different kinds of radars in so many different environments. So we are going through that process, but we've been very lucky that we've been partnering with RTX, probably the best, um, radar company on the planet, and also GM, one of the best, if not the best, who has deployed radar from early on days. So really good partnership there. But I think to scale, I mean, as Rick mentioned, we need the first companies to, adopt us, and it takes a long process. My previous two companies, the same way. Um, Getting the first companies rolled out is the challenge. But once that happens, then you get a lot more acceptance, and I think that's where we are.
And so, Rick, I mean, automotive wise, I mean, you ran General Motors. Why can't we speed this up? What's it take to get this into cars more quickly? Because, like you say, I mean, it's got an immediate safety impact. And from a driver convenience standpoint, I'm with you. I love this hands-free driving. I mean, and I can't wait for autonomous to show up. And I'm a hardcore enthusiast too that's saying it.
Yeah, well, there are times when you want to control the car, and there are other times when you've got 8 hours on the road and you just want to. So I mean, I think they both work together. So I think, John, traditionally the automakers have moved very deliberately on new technology, and not without good reason, because of the safety aspect, because of the regulatory aspect, because of getting lawsuits and that sort of thing. So there's been I mean, things are well tested before they're willing to be put into real products, and that takes a long time. And I dealt with a lot of companies startups whose idea was to sell to OEMs, and I said, boy, you better raise a lot of money and bring a lunch, because it's going to take a while. You won't believe how much testing you need to do. By the way, sometimes going directly through suppliers, you can go faster for some of these technologies. But I also think so. So some good reasons for all that, but as we've seen in other sectors, we saw with a company like Tesla, as we see with a company like SpaceX, the de novo startups who are fortunate enough to raise the capital and are willing to challenge some of the norms that we've embraced in the industry can really stir things up. And so I think, as a leader of let me say, traditional OEM, we're going to need to figure out, I mean, this is a tough assignment, but how do we bring forward from the past these important values of safety and testing, et cetera, but don't let them make us always be behind in new technology applications. And I would just, give a little credit to some of the OEMs. I work mostly, I think, with GM venture companies, and also Stellantis has been pretty active over the past couple of years, I guess. And other OEMs have done it too, but with successful coordination of their venture arms with their technology arms, I think they've gotten a lot of learning. They've probably gotten $10 of learning for a buck of expense and investment. And I think that sort of thing at these times of really upheaval and change in the industry, really smart things to do. I think the companies that can do that best are gonna be able to sort of get around some of these historical categorizations of just being too slow and then run the risk of falling behind when these changes come in.
So
Yeah.
actually, I have a question in terms of to either John or Rick. How do you guys see the competition on ADAS on level two and level three to heat up? I mean, or is there a well understood competition or clean competition? How do you guys see that?
Well, I think it's a space with immense activity right now. And, from where I sit, we look at how the market looks at these things. And Mobileye Trading has got a $15 billion market cap, which is more than giant companies like Aptiv or Magna. So the capital is flowing like crazy into the space. I don't think there's a clear definition of what ADAS, level two is, level three is, and what the benefits are. I mean, it's really being shaped right now. So, we're in the throes of sort of the formation of this new industry. And I just say one other thing, in terms of the automakers being slow, Rick, I was thinking 10 years ago, the automakers didn't have venture arms. They didn't view this as part of the way they did business. So I think you have an environment like this where the incumbents are looking for an edge, where there are new guys coming in with less barriers to adoption, and you have this technology change in the ADAS space. All you need, as you said, is a little staying power to make sure you're in front of people. The old idea is get in traffic and you'll get hit. I think that's what you got to do.
I would just add to this. I wonder if we look back on this in 20 years, the fascination with full autonomous driving, which was, everybody was talking about 8 years ago. They were saying we'd have fully autonomous vehicles in 5 years. Obviously, that didn't work out. But I wonder if some of the obsession with that maybe took a little bit of the eye off of the more near-term opportunities to apply this. Now, some companies, I think, did both. My friends at GM, they made the big investment in Cruise, which was fully autonomous. But meanwhile, they didn't stop innovating themselves, and so they were early to the game with Super Cruise. And now I know, Ford's in there, but I'm seeing more competition and the Germans, Mercedes, they're getting into this, and so I just think it maybe got in a little slower in the case of a lot of good OEMs because everybody's thinking this full autonomy is coming in or hoping. But I think this game is on now, and there's value to be realized by getting to the next step faster, and there's competitive consequences of not. And I want to reemphasize what John said about, meanwhile, this overarching concern of where the Chinese are and where they're coming, et cetera. I'm sure they're not fiddling around doing nothing in this space too. And so we got to find places where we can win.
I
And,
think
and
with Tesla being such a buzz in the industry and the incredible valuation that they have, and focusing primarily on camera, I mean, everyone's seen the how Tesla's been hitting deers left and right, but I think there's an opportunity for all the OEMs outside of Tesla to bring an advanced radar. Although I know I've seen quotes from Elon that says if I had a really great radar, I'll use it. But I think there's an opportunity for OEMs to innovate in that department and just take the safety level on L2 and L3 way out there. Um,
Yeah, and I don't think they can be too dogmatic on technology, whether it's radar or cameras or LiDAR. And, as Rick points out, the customers don't care about any of that. So, if there's a better way, like software-defined radar, that's like a tremendous value proposition. So I think this idea that you have to pick one path and stick with it, it's just not practical. Technology is changing; it's very competitive, and I don't think like years ago when we were doing product programs where you were locking something in for 6, 8, 10 years. That's just not true with software. So your competitors are going to move more quickly as well.
There is you brought up ADAS. It's the fastest growing segment of componentry going onto cars right now. It's terrific. But as I pointed out over the last decade, as more and more ADAS has been added to cars, traffic fatalities have gone up. Explain for everybody watching now what your radar will do. I mean, you talked about the azimuth and the greater resolution and all that, but in plain terms for people, what will they experience that could make their car safer?
yeah, in the past, uh, automakers they didn't want to apply radar decision-making process in stopping the car because of many false positives. And so the cars did not have a very reliable way of stopping the car and not hitting pedestrian or the car in front of you. Um, the technology has improved quite a bit. So a AAA study showed that 7 years ago, everyone pretty much failed at 35 miles an hour hitting the car in front of them. But now in 2024, they were able to do that. All of them were able to do that. So that's a good thing. But now that the speed has gone up to 55 and 60 miles an hour, now none of them can meet that requirement. And the pedestrian detection also is pretty key in terms of being able to separate the pedestrian next to a car or next to a road or something, not to, so if you run at speed and if you don't detect that person, you're going to hit it. And all of these things you want to guarantee performance on every day, 24 hour a day kind of a thing. Uh, but cameras can participate and help, but cameras are vulnerable to optical illusion during the day, and also during the night they're not really that good. And so to really integrate a full-on safety plan, there's no other way. So you have camera for the day, but you need radar for night. That's really that simple. LiDAR has issues because of fog and all that. They have range issues, and so, but radar is the only cost-effective method to get there. But in the past, they have not been very reliable, and so that's why they're not participating in the decision making of stopping the car when they have to, and that's where we have to go.
So my understanding is with MPS and the software-defined radar, you can spot objects in the road at a far greater distance with much greater resolution.
Right.
Ergo, the car's computer can make much more intelligent decisions as to what to do. Slow down faster, hit the brakes, or whatever.
Right. So yeah, so we just for the first time when we recorded a pedestrian next to a car 1 meter apart at 150 meters, meaning that the car has plenty of time to slow down, and that's a significant breakthrough. The current state of the art, you won't be able to do that. You have to get too close, about 45 to 50 meters before you detect it. So we cut quite a bit of slack to decision-making process to make it the right decision. So and even then more reliable. So we've done some interesting stuff that is going to come out at CES, but we think for the first time we've been the only company to show this, that you can pick a pedestrian which has a low radar signature or cross section next to a big car which has a very big cross section or signature, and to be able to tell the difference. And that's kind of the big challenge.
I think a consumer would understand that you say I can see a person a tenth of a mile away, and
Right.
you know it's different from what's next to it. I think people that doesn't take that much explanation.
Look,
Right.
you guys have got me sold on it. I can't wait to see this in cars. Have I missed anything here? Anything to add to this conversation?
John, I would just add, the role that regulation plays in. We've hit that, and I just think at this time of such great change in the industry and such opportunity, it's going to be critical for the regulators to be up to speed, to do the right degree of regulating, not so excessive as to, kill innovation, but not so that, we have cowboys running fast and loose when they shouldn't be. And I just I hope that we can have, and traditionally we've had some great periods of regulation, and we've had some periods where I don't think it's been particularly helpful to the industry. And hopefully we're going to be in a period where we get the right kind of regulatory help. I would even call it support. And I do think back to your point, this issue of highway fatalities in a place like the U.S. growing is just inexcusable. I suspect it's got stuff to do with distracted driving and stuff like that. Speed limits, people, if you get on these interstates, if you're not going, well, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but you got to be moving pretty fast to keep up with well, it's even true in Detroit, or especially true in Detroit. I just think either somebody's going to have a massive intervention to change the way drivers drive, and I wouldn't be betting on that, or we got to get this technology which is covering those gaps. And that's why I'm bullish on these kind of technologies. But let's not forget, this isn't just about a business and a car consumer. This is about safety, which I think has got to be the fundamental first thing that we think about when we think about this. And that's why I'm so excited about the comment that was just made about seeing it at 150 meters, which is really terrific.
Feroz, any closing thoughts?
No, it's pretty exciting times, I think, in the whole field of safety, driving, self-driving. It's just quite amazing. There's a confluence of advanced technology, good semiconductor, silicon availability to do all these amazing things. So we are very excited to be at the forefront of it. So.
Yeah, look, to me, it's fascinating to know that you can take software, take an existing signal, and really improve it, and end up saving lives, and do it at a lower cost. So I think you got quite a package there together. I want to thank all three of you, though. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Neural Propulsion Systems, NPS, is a pioneer in next-generation radar systems, delivering AI-powered solutions for crystal-clear visibility. Its Hyper-Definition Radar Operating System, HROS, enhances safety and performance, offering unmatched clarity to detect hazards in any condition for ADAS.